Hey guys, we are back around again. It's Anthony and Brian and Anthony coming at you, the Bella Italy podcast. And just wanted to introduce ourselves. We're rarely on video, and for good reason. You're witnessing this firsthand. We have faces for audio, as I like to say. But no, we're we're happy to be coming at you. Anthony, welcome to the video edition of this episode. How you doing, my friend?
Yes, Brian, you are right. We have faces for radio, but by demand, we're going to try this out and see how people like it and what response we get. So good to see you, Brian.
Yeah, the outcry has been so much that we had to come live. No, I'll tell you what we're doing. It's really fun. We've been doing a little mini series here in the middle of season 3, at the end of season 3, where we decided to take the most commonly, frequently asked questions about travel to Italy and distill them down into what we hope would be, we had hoped would be succinct questions, but they ended up being really good questions that opened up to larger topics. And of course, we've got a series of 3 different episodes on the podcast already covering the top 21 frequently asked, commonly asked questions that we get from customers coming to us on the business side of this podcast, which is Italy with Bella. You can go there, check us out, ItalyWithBella.com. That said, we thought, well, let's distill it down again. And so we're taking the 21 down to only 5 questions. So we went back through the list. We looked at what are the most pertinent, useful, helpful topics that we could cover on a live edition like this. And we thought, let's just serve this up as, kind of a special live, edition, but we're compacting those 3 episodes. So if there's things that you like in what we're about to get into, there's much, much more in those 3 episodes that we did. All of it free, just free value, free information for you. And so without further ado, we'll get into the first question that we get hit with. It's so ridiculously simple and yet profound and complex at the same time. And so here we go. Anthony, you've heard this a million times before, but when is the best time to go to Italy? Dun, da, da, da. I'll let you just bite into that.
That's an open question because it depends on what people like, where they want to go, what they have the ability to do, right? So, you have a customer that the kids are off and they want to spend time with them. So a lot of times the summer months, or they want these small town feels and these cultural, feel of going to Italy and feeling like they're a local. Well, a lot of times those small towns aren't available to you in the winter months. They close down the restaurants. So a lot of times it's when you speak to the customer and when we do a consultation call, as you mentioned, we do Own Italy with Bella. So we do a lot of free consultations to get over these little humps to figure out when they're going to go first. And I think the biggest thing is finding out your time availability, who's going on the trip, right? What do you want to get out of the trip? Now, if you want to get the big 4, Amalfi, Venice, Florence, and Rome, then obviously any time of the year is good, but the best time to go is on off seasons, November, December, January, February, March, April. The busier months are May through September, even October now, what we're finding out.
So, when you say that though, and you say the best time, you're talking about to get away from the crowds, to have an authentic experience, to really get a feel for what the locals, how
Exactly.
they live in this particular town or this area. And so we're already kind of getting into that subjective side of if you're trying to avoid the long lines and the mass confusion and the maybe the heat of the summer, that kind of thing. So yeah, it already gets a little bit subjective. And so, but I love what you're touching on, that you're saying that a lot of people want to get away from the bigger crowds. And Italy's experiencing an explosion over here. For those of you who maybe don't know, or you haven't been over here to Italy in the last couple of years, especially post COVID, there's a boom of tourism here in Europe and in Italy especially. And so what our vendors, our partners are experiencing is a lot of overwhelm, and we're working with them to push into those shoulder seasons and to give people the real authentic experience, because that's what a lot of our clients come to us for. Now, that said, if you're listening to this podcast or watching this on YouTube and you feel like, oh, well, I don't mind the crowds because I've only got a certain section of the year that I can go. Okay, that's a different discussion at that point. But by and large, a lot of people are going to want to go away from June, July, and August. So they're already into the shoulders of the, April, May, into beginning of June, and then that September, October, November, those are the shoulders. And then we're pushing even a little bit into the seasonal, the holiday seasons as well, because that gives us so much more bandwidth in terms of the location that you want to be, great pricing. A lot of restaurants are still open, some seasonal activities going on, low crowds. All of that kind of stuff comes into play. And so these are some of the metrics that we have to deal with when we're talking to some folks that want to come over here to Italy, to understand, okay, what would be best for them based on what they're after.
Yeah, and exactly, you hit the nail on the head there. I think the thing is, you have to look at Italy is great anytime, right? It's just strategically and tactically every day, how do you handle it, right? Where do you sit in Rome? What do you do in Rome? What time of year is it? Same thing with Venice, or in Florence, right? It is timing, but it is disheartening is the word I'm looking for. When you have a customer that comes back and their dream is to go to Positano, right? And they go to Positano and they realize, man, was it overcrowded? But it's the only time I can go. I've always dreamt of it. And they really want to immerse themselves in it. And they realize I should have went to Sorrento or Ischia. It's a little quieter, a little bigger. And, next time I do want to go to Positano, maybe I do go at the end of October, or I do go in April. So, there's the rub right there, but it is availability for that customer, what they want to get out of it. Once again, I've been in Positano in October. I've been in April and May. There is a difference between going in the summer and doing those off-shoulder months. But yeah, Italy's fine year-round. I was in August last year. I've been in June this past year. Still loved it. Still enjoyed it. But you need to know strategically and tactically every day what you're going to do and what you're going to see.
Yeah. And even pushing into some of those shoulder seasons. I mean, I live over here, but I come up against the rub of the transportation becomes a little bit difficult in those extreme shoulders. And so in June, I did the first part of an exploratory trip over to Sardinia and did a certain coast. I was avoiding the more touristy, resort, tourist ridden side of Sardinia on purpose, because in that season it's really overrun. I wanted to explore some of the other sides. I'll go back in October, but even looking at the flights, I'm going from Sicily to Sardinia, from Catania to Cagliari. I'm right up against one of the last weeks in which I can actually get a direct flight without having to go up to Rome and then bounce back down. Because there's just not that frequency. And so we run into that in the extreme shoulder seasons, where we have to start looking at, okay, transportation could become a problem, weather becomes a problem, seasonal activity in a certain town, holidays affect things. And so, yeah, it's finding that sweet spot, I think, for every client that's wanting to come over. And so I would say to you, if you're listening, what is that sweet spot for you, for your family, what you're trying to get out of it, where you're trying to go, what you're trying to do, the experience that you want to have, and then we can help you narrow in and find the right metrics that meet all of that criteria for you. But there isn't just one block answer, the best time to go to Italy. I mean, I guess if we had to distill it down, the best time to go to Italy is that time that gives you the most of what you want out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even like Positano, you said, so Sardinia, same thing. By October 30th or November 1st, there's no ferries going to Capri, right? And or you're not able to get around with ferries quite easily. So, it's not the most optimum time to go. I mean, you could go to Sorrento all year round. But, like I said, you hit the nail on the head again. What I'm trying to say is if you really want to see those three cities and you want to feel like a local, then maybe go in the shoulder months to Florence, Venice, and Rome. But if you really want to get the cultural experience, then you got to go in the non-shoulder months to really get into those smaller towns.
Okay. Yep. And so let's pivot and go to that next question, because it kind of tethers to what you're just talking about. A lot of people do come over, especially first timers, and they've got a bit of a bucket list. They've always dreamt of seeing Florence or Rome or Venice. They've always had in their mind a certain kind of experience, or they've been following certain bloggers or YouTubers or Instagrammers, influencers, blah, 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 about where they should go and what they should do. So they've kind of got it locked in their minds. From what you've seen, having those conversations with a lot of first timers who have something locked in their brains. And I know there's wiggle room there, because sometimes they get something locked. I want this kind of experience, but we ended up, putting them in a different place, but they have that or better experience than they had imagined because they just didn't know what was available over here. But okay, that said, is there an ideal itinerary? Is there an ideal trip especially for those first timers coming over, something that you would just say, look, if you've never been, at least try this, three, 4 stops along the way, 12 days, whatever, 2 weeks. What is that ideal kind of timeline that you would point people to if they've never been?
So first timers, if you're doing 12 to 14 days, it's 3 to 4 cities, right? So I look at it as antiquity of history, the Renaissance, the beauty of Tuscany, maybe, that image you have of the hills and the wine and the food, and then the water. So you can hit 4 towns and really, get a taste of Italy with the history, the food, the water, the hills, the wine, and all of that. So, a lot of times you look at starting in Amalfi in the bottom, going up through Rome for the antiquity, going into Tuscany, you know what I mean? And, the hilltop towns with the more quiet and, more rustic with the cypress trees and the wine, and then the Renaissance of Florence. Now, if you wanted to, you could take out maybe Amalfi or take out that Tuscan hilltop town and get up to Venice and see the water that way too. So that would be idyllic to me, is to do that. And of course, get the taste, because a lot of times customers are like, well, I have to see this. It's my only time. It's my first time. I'm 45. I've never been. I'm dreaming of it. So we're going to you can't just bypass Rome. You can't bypass, the Renaissance, of Florence and the beauty and food and all that. So where do you get those other, 2 types of, Italy visions that you might have of the water and of the hilltop towns? So that's kind of where I would go. And we have, as we have very, specific places that are a little more of a gem to go. So,
yeah, I love that you're talking about it. It's kind of like a little buffet, It's
perfect, yeah.
A lot of our favorite, gelateria over here, or in this season, we're eating a lot of granita in Sicily, and you're eating what's fresh. You walk into the bar, the neighborhood coffee shop right around the corner here from me. They've essentially got 3 or 4 flavors of granita at any particular day, because you're serving up what's fresh. We're just into the season now where Gelsi, which is like I forget, is it boysenberry, is particular, summer berry that we find over here, Gelsi in Italian. And I've been waiting for that the whole season, making it through with chocolate and pistachio and all others. But I've been waiting, waiting for this. I've been waiting for this. Yeah.
Oh, how you do it, Brian?
It's a little, Well, it's
little struggle.
I rub it on my I rub it on my face because, as you can see, we don't have AC over here, and it's 40 degrees out and about 35 inside, and so it's the one little €2 reprieve that I get from my hard life. Anyway, my point is, we have those choices because that's what's fresh, that's what's ready, that's what's in season. That's what people want. And I don't think it's a bad thing to narrow down to those fewer choices. There are so many more choices. There's so many things to go and do. And I love the first timers who were like, I never know if I'll be able to go back again. Then they're texting us on the plane. How can I set up my next call? Because I can't wait to go back.
Can I buy a house in Tuscany?
Because you get it's a little bit addictive. You come over here and you're like, okay, I'm going to spend every summer here for the rest of my life. But anyway, my point is, I love that you're creating this little bit of a buffet, and it is kind of a starter buffet, but there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I'm saying. And if you've got the kind of choices, the couple of flavors that you really are after, and I loved what you were saying, it's not just about the town itself, it's about what you get out of that town, whether the antiquity or the Renaissance or being by the water. It's a certain kind of an experience that certain towns do really well, even better than some other towns, and that's just kind of what's in season, and that's okay to have that, especially on your first time around. Don't shy away from that.
I think what happens when we have a consultation, we'll have customers that are so overwhelmed because they talk to a cousin who's been twice and they love this town or this city. You got to go to Positano. We just came back and it was magical. And then I talked to my aunt, and their aunt loves Venice. They go to Venice. So what happens is they have a list this long. But with the consultation, you're able to pull out, well, what do you want? Like, well, I don't like crowds. Okay. Do you like wine? Well, I don't really drink. I'm not a wine drinker, but I do love seafood. Then there's these maneuverings that you go through. So do you want to see museums and tours? Well, I really don't care about, like, you got to vet it, right? So that's the thing about going the first time. It doesn't have to be the big three just because your family and friends saw it. Let's figure that out. What do you really want out of the trip, and who's going on the trip? You have kids with you, So that first trip doesn't have to be the 3-city stamp. That's something we got to pull out of you. Well, what do you want out of it? And they're very happy. Sometimes we love the lake. We live on a lake. Oh, geez, I didn't know that. Do you want that in Israel? Well, no, we already live on a lake. We don't have to go to the lake. Or the people that want water like the lakes. Right. So there's a lot of that pulling out and figuring that out, because if you just went with every customer, I always say this on the call, if you talk to an Italian, and you might have done this in your Italian friends, you've been to America, what do they say? Been to New York City.
Oh yeah, you got the top 3. Yeah, top 3.
Because that's where their
Miami.
friends went.
Those are the 3.
Miami's big in Vegas. Right. And they go. But if you vetted it out, they'd be like, yeah, New York City's great, but I really, I love country music or whatever, right? So those are the things you have to really pull out of the customers, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. And one of the things, we're going to go to the third question now. One of those things that you've been talking about is about the crowds, because a lot of people don't want to be in a lot of lines, standing, wasting time. We're from America. We have the fast pass. We like the VIP treatment. We want to skip the crowd. We want to skip the line. You come over here to Italy and, oh, it's a different system. How do we do that? And so my question, this is the third question that we have today. Is there a way for people to skip the crowds and still go to the places that are on their bucket list? If they want to go to the Uffizi, if they want to go to Rome, see the Colosseum, do the tour, is there a way to beat the crowd and still see what's on their bucket list?
So there's a couple of answers there, right? First off, let's use the Vatican, right? The Vatican tour, Sistine Chapel, St. Peter's. With that is, first of all, the earlier the better. Most tourists don't like to get up early, one. Number 2 is a private tour. Now, go early, private tour, big. So you get a private tour, they get the tickets, they skip the line, you walk in with the private guide. And what's good about a private guide is they know how to maneuver. They know where the crowds are, that you can't get away from the crowd. But they'll put you in a corner. They'll put you over to the side. They know where they can go and can't go, where the best acoustics are. So a lot of that is stuff that you want to go with a local, you want to go private, and of course you want to go early, right? And even some things like the Trevi Fountain, right? You go to the Trevi Fountain, you should be able to get up in sunset. Now there's crowds there even at 6:30 in the morning. So you used to think, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to get up early and go. That doesn't work all the time anymore. But the best thing to do is season, time of day, and to do a private. That's the three things I would say because you're dealing with a local. Anything you want to add to that? You think I missed there?
No, I think that's right. You're looking at the seasonality, the time of day, and going with a local who knows the inside track, who knows, hey, while the crowd is going that way, let me bring you over here and show you something that you won't hear when you're on that big tour. That's a lot of the inside, the kind of the hand in the glove that you really need that inside track in order to experience. And that's what a lot of our clients that come to us want, and I think a lot of the listeners to our podcast, they want that inside track, and they want to not just to know all the secrets, but they want to have a real and special experience. And that goes to number 4, the fourth question that we have today out of the 5, how to have a real experience in a major city. And so again, we've looked at some of these questions before and went really deep on some of them, but these are probably the ones that we get asked the most frequently. And a lot of people, they have that bucket list, they want to avoid the crowd, but on the other side, they still want to have a real experience. And I'm just going to put in this, I'll put this pin in here and we can circle back around after your answer. But I want to say up front, sometimes having that real experience means getting away from what you think in your mind you need to have, whether it's that I've got to go to Florence, and I love Florence, I love Bologna, I love Rome, I love Venice, I love all of these places, and I have my little places that I like to go and things to do and see. But sometimes it means changing that up a bit and going out of season or in a different time, going with a private guide, all of that kind of thing can be super helpful. But, what I'm going to come back around to what you said at the beginning. Sometimes people want what they want in Rome is that antiquity. There are places just outside of Rome, 20 minutes, 30 minutes outside of city center, where you can go to Roman ruins, the old palace, ruins of emperors, and have private experiences. You can have that not just, around, let's say, I don't know, in Naples and going down south and looking at the remains of Pompeii. There's other places just as impressive with half the crowds that you get a very similar, if not just as good experience. So all that to say, there's other ways around it. So, you got to kind of open the mind a little bit to go, okay, Florence or similar, because we have some similars that are pretty dadgum great when it comes to serving up the Renaissance. I'll just throw one of my hometowns in there. Mantova for Renaissance is incredible. It's a Gonzaga family against the Medici, and so it's a little bit different, but it's completely Renaissance and just as incredible. But all that to say, coming back to the question that we get a lot, I want a real experience. I want away from the crowd, all of that, but I still want a major city. Yeah. What do we tell people? How do we guide them?
So that happens a lot, right? And their impression, the first thing they'll write down in the consultation is, we want a cultural experience. We want a culture. And, the 3 major cities are really difficult to get a cultural experience. And their idea of cultural experience is, I'm going to walk in a restaurant and the grandmother's going to throw a pasta on the table, right? We try to get, my idea of a cultural experience is to be in a city, in the city, but in a neighborhood that there's only locals, right? Where the tourists on, that's the first thing I want. There's a market I can go to. There's locals eating at the local restaurants. There's, mom and pop places that they have in their head. That's the first thing. Where is the neighborhoods where the tourists are? Like in Rome, Testaccio. Testaccio is the one neighborhood. It's a 20-minute walk from Trastevere. It's a 15-minute walk to get to Campo dei Fiori, maybe 22-minute walk to Campo dei Fiori, which you're getting into the tourist area. But I'll tell you, even in Venice, the same thing. We put them in certain areas of Venice and they walk 10 minutes into the mayhem, the crowds, to see the pictures and to take their, get the T-shirts and all that. But their cultural experience is what? Their cultural experience is seeing the Nornas sitting out with their grandkids playing soccer, quietness, locals. That's the first thing you want, right? That's the first thing I would say is find a neighborhood in a major city that doesn't have the tourist attractions, that doesn't have the markets and the lines of places to go eat pizza and lines out the door with all the local Americans, right? So I think that's the first thing you need to do. And the next thing for cultural experiences is to find locals. Like we have someone in Rome. She's a local. She opens her house up. Find the people that open their house up to locals. To have a local experience. Let them serve you. Let them cook for you. Those things. Or even the artisans, the local artisans that no one pays attention to anymore. And they're happy to see you. These are the things that you get more of a local experience because it's passed down through generations, and you're seeing that. And I hope that answers your question there.
Yeah, that's great. Let's move to the fifth question, and then we'll kind of wrap up. But one of the things you've been touching on is that real authentic, away from the crowds, where the nonas are, where the grandkids are playing. You walk into a restaurant and the nona's throwing the food on the table, this kind of thing. So I want to take this fifth question and kind of flip it on its heel so that we can really dig into it. The question is about the typical ideas of what Americans have. We're talking about Americans in particular. Obviously, we've got folks coming from Australia, the UK, other places, especially English-speaking countries. But we're talking specifically about that American mindset because we've got so many people of Italian descent in America, and they've got a certain thing stuck in their head about what Italian food is really like. They've got it stuck in their head. And, depending on the part of the country that you come from, your parents or grandparents might have done it a similar way. And so they go to Milan or they go to Rome and they're expecting a certain kind of food. And they're a lot of times, maybe not shocked, but either disappointed because it wasn't like they remember in their cultural setting that they're coming out of, which is very niche, very specific, very dialect-driven, specific recipes from a certain unknown town, miles away from any major city. And so with recipes that are very particular, or you have that Olive Garden experience or, whatever, that you're coming over and you're trying to equate these things and you're going, okay, Bologna was not the food experience that I was thinking, or Florence wasn't, or whatever. So I would love for you to just kind of dig in. What are some of those misconceptions that people have about food when they're coming over to Italy? What doesn't jive or doesn't quad, doesn't square for them?
So the first thing you think of, is most Italian Americans or any American that comes over thinks that pizza in California, pizza in New York, pizza in Tennessee, pizza in Chicago, Alfredo, whatever it is they're thinking in their mind, across the board is going to be the same thing when they go to Italy, right? They're going to go to Italy and they're going to be able to get pizza just in Venice, just as good as in Campania. Or they're going to be able to get seafood in Amalfi just as good in Florence, because it's Italy, and wherever I want, it's Italian with the stamp, right? That's not how it works. As we know, it's regionalized. Yeah. And like you just said, it could be 2 miles from your house. The food is different. The pasta is different. They add onions, but they don't add onions there, whatever, right? But Americans have this impression, like we have customers like, I just had a steak. I'm like, where are you? They're in Venice. And why are you ordering a steak in Venice? So that's the first.
Why are you ordering that? Yeah.
So that's the first problem, right? Even in Rome, people get steak. I'm like, why are you getting steak in Rome? Mm. So, there's a regionalization that they don't realize, because in America, pizza's pizza. Pasta's pasta. And meatballs and spaghetti, right? So I think that's the first thing I got to say is that there's this, I'm going to Italy, I can get any food that's on the menu in America. No, that's not it. It's regionalized. Not saying you can't get it, but it's not going to be good. It's not going to be the same as getting carbonara in Venice as it is when you sure get it in Rome. So that being said, the other thing is there's certain things they don't do, like garlic. I don't know. I grew up with it too, being Italian American, even though I'm a dual citizen. My heritage is my Italian American heritage. We thought garlic. Every Italian uses garlic. Until you go to Italy, they rub it on their bread. They put it in the pan, and then they take it out of the pan, right? They don't just put 40 cloves of garlic, right? They actually take it out because they don't want to overpower the ingredients, right? So these misconceptions that I love to hear about it when customers come back. I didn't realize it. Or I'm on a call with them, and I tell them that. So, the food culture is different. There's no spaghetti and meatballs. There's no chicken parm. There's no Alfredo sauce. There's a lot of
somebody's crying somewhere right now.
And don't get me wrong, I love chicken parm. If I have a chicken parmesan sandwich, which I don't get because there's no parmesan, it's mozzarella, but that's another question. That's another thing for another day. When you go to Italy, don't expect certain things, but the food is, I gotta say, it's 5x, 10x better than the United States. Because of the simplicity. We have pizza, and I'm going on a rant here, Brian, I'm sorry. We have pizza in America, and it's the meat lovers pizza, or it's the, it's got pineapple and ham, and it's got whatever. Italians, they do excellent with their ingredients and their simplicity. Their pizza's got one ingredient, 2 tops, they don't do a ton of, they don't overpower you with ingredients. So these things that they learn, and they learn when they go, the Italian Americans, the simplicity, or the Americans, the simplicity that the Italians use. But it's eye-opening, but once they have it and once they understand it, they realize what they're getting back here is not what is in Italy for a quality or taste. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and I'd say
it's difficult for us too. When we come back, we're like, I can't go to an Italian restaurant. Sorry,
well, for folks that want that kind of diversity, because we're used to a pretty wide spread, a lot of bandwidth. We walk into a restaurant in the States and there's 100 different things on the menu, and it's not always that way. And in fact, we actually look for restaurants that aren't designed that way, catering to the tourist palates and, putting all these crazy things on there that aren't traditional. They're not, and not to say that you can't push the envelope sometimes, but when you're just catering to the weird, strange, imported taste buds that don't actually represent the culture or the cuisine, we tend to steer away from that. But for folks that want that kind of diversity, it is about knowing where to go to get the best of what they have. And so when you go to a Naples, for example, it's the mozzarella, it's the fried foods, which is really the unsung hero of Naples, the pizza, of course. But a lot of times we're not pushing people to the places that have, 10,000 plus reviews on Google. We're pushing to the mom and pops that are doing an excellent job of representing their culture and the cuisine well, and they're using, top ingredients. And then when you go to, the hill country in Chianti, or you're down here near Ragusa in Sicily, we're pushing towards those beef options and certain other cheeses, or, we're tweaking for what that zone really has that represents that region and that province really well. And so there is a lot of diversity, but you're not going to get it, or you shouldn't be getting it on a single menu. If you do, it means you're in a tourist trap, I think. And that's where you've got to open your eyes a little bit.
The other thing that's frustrating to me, talking to customers or seeing online, you'll have an American go out there and they're a blogger or they're an Instagrammer. And they go, I just had the 3 best sandwiches in Rome or in Florence. And I know, I don't even have to look. And I know which one it is, right? Like there's one in
you can tell
Fortunata.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's Osteria Fortunata. Fortunata is 4 restaurants in the city center of Rome, lines out the door, and there's not one Italian in there. And then what happens is Americans go to, and I got to write that down when I talk to Anthony, because we have to get a reservation there. And it's terrible. You can't make pasta that quick by hand for hundreds of people. You can't make carbonara one bite, because carbonara has to be done each single person, right?
But what if you're mixing it in your cheese wheel, Anthony? That's how they get it so fast, because they're just whipping it up in their cheese wheels.
It tortures me, right? And then now, I don't really want to do, but like, so it's like, why would you think if there's lines out the door, wouldn't it be a tourist place? So, and these are the things that I think the other impression, not just what they eat here, but before they go, this is what the Italian food is. So I don't think we hit on that enough. I mean, you hit on it, but that's why I wanted to expound on it. I think that's what happens is what's on Instagram from someone that is an expert blogger that's not Italian, doesn't speak Italian, doesn't live there, and now is telling us as he moves on to France for the next sandwich. So
I mean, you got to know that you got to follow the money and understand what's paying the bills for someone like that. They roll in and they're going to give you what to do with 24 hours in Bologna, for example. That's because they were sent there on their company's dime with 24 hours to figure it out. They did a couple of sampling and options, and they're going to write up the best of what they happened across and what other people are saying. And that becomes what they think is ideal or representing the town. And honestly, until you dig under the surface and you get away from some of those crowds and you talk to the locals, you see what's traditional, what really represents well, where the ingredients are coming from. We're big on low food, 0 kilometer. We want that true representation because that's what our clients are wanting as well. And so we mesh on that. And that's where we try to steer people. So there's so much that we could go into, and I'd love to have a full episode on some of the food, idiosyncrasies here that we have when we bring this over our American culture. Yeah, that would be a fun episode, I think.
I think if you think about it, most customers want to talk about food and wine, so if they can get a little more, when I go over there, I don't make mistakes, and I want to hear about what Brian and Anthony say about that culture. It'd be great. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Well, let's wrap up for today, guys. If you've been, if you maybe happened across this and this is your first experience with the Bella Italy podcast, please don't judge us based on this 30-minute take here. Go back and take a look at seasons that we have on the podcast platform. You can find us on your favorite platform, whether Spotify or Apple or Google or whatever. Check us out online on ItalyWithBella.com. Go there, sign up for a free consultation. Doesn't cost you anything, no strings attached. You don't have to go look at a lovely cottage up in the hills, and you're not going to walk away with a Ginsu knife either, but it's not going to cost you anything. You're going to talk to real experts who know Italy and are over here where I am all the time, trying to help people like you have an amazing experience. So hopefully all this was helpful to you. Go back, check out our catalog, leave a review, a thumbs up, something so that we can help others as well. And do yourself a favor. Next time you're coming over to Italy, come to Italy with Bella. And that's all for today. Thanks, Anthony. I appreciate your time and digging into these 5 questions a little bit deeper.
Appreciate it, Brian. Thank you.
All right. Ciao for now, guys. Bye.